You have this incredible family motto that I would love for every family to adopt this, but can you share it with us?
So in our family, we have a mantra, which is to never worry alone. And that's true of us as parents and also of our kids. And what I hope to instill in my kids with that mantra is the idea that we are worthy of support. We are worthy of being held and nurtured and supported when we are having setbacks. We are not our setbacks. Our worth is our worth. And when we worry with others, we feel validated. We hear our worth. We see it in the support that others give us. We get that social proof that we are valued no matter what.
Hmm.
Whatever you do, don't worry alone. That's when we get into trouble. So reach out for support. We think as parents, our job is to raise self reliant, independent adults. And that is an important thing to do. But there is a more profound lesson that our kids need to learn if we want to raise them to be healthy. And that is the skills of interdependence, how to rely on others and how to have others rely on them in healthy ways. And so that's where the don't worry alone comes from, is part of the skills that I'm trying to teach my kids of interdependence.
Oh, wow. That's so important. You're right. And we do focus on kind of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and being self-reliant and taking responsibility. That modeling healthy connection and interdependence, getting support when you need support, talking about your feelings, that we got to model that too. And if you're not, you're teaching somebody to suffer in silence the way that so many of us have for generations. One other thing that I love that you wrote about was this idea that being good enough is way better than being perfect. Why is that?
Yes. So I talk about this in the book that when my oldest was born almost 18 years ago, I thought about going back to graduate school to get a PhD in psychology so that I could be the perfect parent with the latest research.
Oh
And
my
I know,
God.
crazy, right? And what
Yes.
I found is that perfection as a parent does not serve me and it does not serve my kids. What serves us both better is this idea of being good enough. And the good enough mother is responsive to her kids' needs. She doesn't meet every need because she can't. Only, no one can. But to be responsive, to acknowledge it, to validate the need, and to do the best that you can do. And that takes us off the hook as parents, not needing to be perfect. And it helps our kids, regulate their emotions when they get a little bit disappointed and frustrated that they can't have the perfect parent in this situation.
It reminds me of this thing that you wrote that the difference between getting a 91% on a test and a 99 is having a good life.
That is it. That
That
is it. And, as parents, I certainly fell into this trap myself. The idea that we had to put our needs behind our kids at every turn. And I certainly subscribe to that idea of needing to be the perfect mother. And then I realized that I was getting burnt out. And I would say the thing that really changed my mind about all of this is the research. The number one intervention for any child in distress is to make sure the primary caregiver, most often the mother or the father, that their well being, their mental health is intact because a child's resilience rests fundamentally on their caregiver's resilience. And caregivers' resilience rests fundamentally on the depth and support of their relationships.
I want to make sure everybody heard that. You're saying that based on the research, if there is a child that is struggling, the most important intervention that works to help the struggling child is to give the caregiver of that child deeper levels of support.
Yes.
If you're somebody that's listening to us right now and you're like, Jenny, Mel, that sounds great, but I don't have anybody, or I don't even know where to start, or who the hell am I going to ask because everyone that I know is also burnt out. You have a framework for this. So can you lay it out for everybody listening?
Sure. So this is a study that was originally started by Sonia Luthar, one of the leading researchers in the world on resilience. And she did a series of studies, including people who were busy mothers and also had a busy professional life. And she wanted to find out if 1 hour a week for 3 months, 1 hour a week with a small group of 4 to 5 people in the same sort of kind of world, if they could be sources of support for each other. And what she found was no mother bowed out, even when the busyness, of their professional and home lives were calling for them. 1 hour of the week, they met, they talked about their struggles, and at the end of it, she measured their cortisol levels. Those had lowered. She measured well being, relationships with their kids, and relationships with their parents. And what she found was that you only need 1 hour of deliberate support a week. 1 hour.
And for those of you going, but I don't know where to get it, churches have free daycare and they have a lot of support groups. That would be a great place to start. Community centers, looking in your town's Facebook pages for events that are going on. You're not going to find it sitting on your couch complaining to yourself about it. You're going to have to put yourself out there. You also say it's critical that we tell our kids and our colleagues and our friends our failure stories. What does that mean?
So my daughter was in seventh grade and she considered herself a good writer. And her seventh grade teacher, gave her paper back and it had red marks all over the place. So she was so discouraged. And I said, Caroline, come to my computer. And I pulled up an early article I had written for the Washington Post science section. And it was edited by a really seasoned, wonderful editor. And it was a bloodbath. I mean, there were comments. There was, I don't understand this. Can you add more here? I need another interview. Where is this study? And my daughter was like, oh my God, I can't believe they let you write for them. And I've been writing for them for 10 years now. And I said, see, at first I was embarrassed. I told her to need all that work to see all those red marks. And then I thought about it a different way. I said, oh, this person is trying to invest in me. They are trying to make me a better writer. So I welcome feedback, is what I said to my daughter. I sometimes even say out loud to myself in my office, well, that's enough for the day. Like just that, because I have a tendency to overwork. And so I have to put the brakes on myself. And I want to model that out loud to my kids.
You have a nicer way of saying, I'm always like, well, I just fucked up again. And then they're like, Mom, dollar in the swear jar. I'm like, I'm going to be paying for your college tuition with the amount I'm swearing around here because I screw up all the freaking time. I'm really curious for you to share with us. What are the top things that parents say or do that we have no idea that is eroding or erasing the value that your kids need to feel?
Yeah. So the first thing that we do is criticize. And most of us know not to be harsh critics of our kids, right? This generation is very aware of not being overly critical. But really, criticism impacts our kids up to 5 times more than a compliment does.
Wow,
So
really?
yeah. So what I try to keep in my mind is that to create this kind of healthy environment in my house, I need to keep a ratio in mind. I need to think that for every one criticism, I need to at least have 5 positive interactions with my kids. We are wired as parents to look for the negative and to try to help our kids overcome the negative. But really, what we need to do to have that kind of connection is we need to focus on the positive things that are inherent about them. What is it about them that's unique? And so when you look at the research on achievement culture or on healthy connections, it is having that warm relationship with a parent, a minimal criticism, and prioritizing affection. That is what helps us create this connection at home. So when I asked the leading researcher, Sunya Luthar, what's one thing I could do tonight in my house to buffer against any achievement pressure in my home? She gave me a phrase that I've kept in my head, which is minimize criticism, prioritize affection. She said the kids who were the healthiest in her studies, who went to these competitive schools, at home, their parents were not critical of them. They were able to separate the deed from the doer.
And can you define criticism? Because I'm thinking about a situation with our daughter the other day where She's moving back to LA. She's out of college. I still consider her a kid because this stuff about mattering is for all of us. And we were talking about the fact that today, while you and I are talking, she's on an airplane heading back, and she got her knickers in a pinch because she wanted to put all of her shoes in a box and then ship the box. And I was like, dude, no, that's going to cost like $100 for crying out loud. You get 2 checked bags for $25, and I can check a bag with your So I criticized her. Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about criticizing her for being stupid?
Criticizing her.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
It's separating, like you did, the deed from the doer.
You've got to get this woman on your podcast. I'm tracking her down, and we're getting Jenny Wallace on the show. And I just want you to get ready, because we're not only going to talk about how you break free from the grind culture and how you can get your life and your peace of mind and your control back,